And we're back! Unsanctioned, our little preview of the college bowl games. So we get to the BCS. Now, the BCS this year, it worked. Number 1 versus number 2, no argument about it. But all the rest of the games are kind of, whatever.
We're still going to watch.
Oh, yeah, of course you are. But, I mean, looking at some of these games, you want to just start or do you want to name them off?
You can name them off, and then we'll go one by one.
All right, you got the Rose Bowl, Wisconsin TCU, excuse me. You have the Discovery Orange Bowl, which just doesn't sound as good as the FedEx Orange Bowl.
No, FedEx, much cooler.
That's Stanford Va Tech. You got the Sugar Bowl with Ohio and Arkansas. And what's the other one I'm missing? BCS game will obviously
Tostitos Fiesta Bowl.
Fiesta Bowl, that's right.
Which would be Oklahoma, Connecticut. Yay.
So
that's a snoozer.
Let's start with the Rose Bowl. You have Big Ten versus TCU, who's going to the Big East, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I would love to see TCU in like a Big 12 or a Big 10 personally. I think it'd be great. I'm so excited about this matchup. This is probably my favorite matchup aside from the national title game, because these two teams are such a perfect fit for such a big game.
Oh, they are. You got 11-1 team versus 12-0.
And Wisconsin's been a team that has put up some points this year, no question about it. They've run into some pretty good defenses in the Big Ten, but they've also scored 70 points like 3 times this season.
They have their offense, 63 touchdowns this year.
Wow.
Their last couple games, Indiana, they beat 83-20, which was just a beatdown, man. 70-23 over Northwestern. Granted, Northwestern didn't have their starting quarterback because of a blown Achilles.
Achilles, yeah.
And some of the other big scores, you had 70-3 over Austin Peay, but who really cares there? And their only loss, though, to Michigan State.
And that was a close game. It was like a 10-point loss.
34-24.
And Michigan State was probably the peak of their run.
Yeah.
About mid-season there.
Well, they did beat Ohio State when they were number 1 in the country, so.
Yep. And that was a pretty big win for them, too. They blew them out, didn't they?
It was by about 10, 15, somewhere in that neighborhood.
That's still a pretty big win.
TCU, this is where it gets interesting because I applaud TCU of all these schools, and Utah, I should say, because they're moving to the Pac-10. They're moving to the Big East here in the next year. But, I mean, you look at their record at 12-0. Yeah, they have a win against Oregon State by 9, which, it's Oregon State. They're in a major conference. You have a win over Utah, Utah is a good team. They just blasted Utah 47-7. And beyond that, you have like Southern Methodist, Colorado State, Wyoming, BYU, Air Force.
I would mention one other game on that schedule that was somewhat impressive, at least for TCU, was probably the San Diego State game.
Yeah, San Diego State's better. They won by 5 in that. That was their second to last game of the season, last home game. But I just can't get past with these teams that aren't in the automatic bid conferences that their schedule. This is my theory. You don't get as beat up playing in those schedules against those teams as you would in the SEC, in the Big Ten. That if you could put together a 12-0 in one of the power conferences, that means something.
Listen, I love this TCU team when they're playing teams that are on their level. They're dominant. They're a great team. They got a great defense, and to go with it, a pretty solid offense. The problem TCU is going to have is they don't show up in bowl games.
No, they don't. Last year they lost to Boise State.
They got killed by Boise State, if I'm not mistaken.
Was that the Fiesta Bowl?
Yeah, I think it was. But whatever bowl it was, TCU's had some problems in bowl games. And this is no Boise State. This is Wisconsin, who was, for all intents and purposes, pretty much the cream of the crop in the Big Ten this year.
Oh, totally were.
And look at this offensive line of Wisconsin. They are incredible. They're easily the best offensive line in the Big Ten. They get John Clay back 100% in this bowl game to go along with a really strong run game as is. When John Clay went out in those last few games, they still ran for over 1,000 yards.
Yeah. TCU's offense, 67 touchdowns this year. 67.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
But against the competition, again, you mentioned, and Southern Methodist is another team, another bowl team that TCU handled this year pretty well. I think Wisconsin handles TCU in the game, although it's going to be fun to watch, and I honestly couldn't be happier for Coach Bielema.
First half close, second half blowout.
I'm not even going to go so far as to say that. I'm going to say Wisconsin has a pretty good hold on things by halftime and then cruises through the second half. And actually, Wisconsin's one of those teams, and Coach Bielema is one of the coaches that's not going to take his foot off the accelerator.
No, definitely not. So Wisconsin by a lot.
Yeah, I say Wisconsin wins this game by probably, I'm going to say 17 points, and I think that's pretty conservative.
TCU will look good in the snakeskin uniforms, though.
Well, opinions will vary. I think the new uniforms are a little weird. TCU's are better, granted, than some of the other ones I've seen this season. I actually really like Boise State's alternate unis that Nike did for them.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, some of those are just really odd, and it doesn't get much more odd than Oregon.
Yeah, really, we'll get to that in a second.
Yes, we will.
Fiesta Bowl, Oklahoma and UConn.
What the hell?
Yeah, UConn, 8-4, 2-4 on the road this year.
Thanks for playing.
I think Oklahoma rolls in this.
Oh yeah, there's no question about it. Oklahoma probably scores about. I'm going to go with like 42 points. I think Oklahoma scores a ton of points, and I think Connecticut they might put up 14. So like 42-14, maybe my final.
I haven't even looked at the odds on this, but I can't imagine it's even close if you look at it. Yes, I am stalling for time right now. It's Oklahoma by 17 in this game.
I think they easily cover that.
And by the way, Wisconsin and TCU, going back to that, I just looked at this. TCU a 2.5-point fave. That's
you want to make some quick money? Go put it down on the Badgers.
I think you'd be right. Where are we going next? Ohio State and Arkansas?
No, I think the next one will be the Discover Orange Bowl.
Stanford and
Virginia Tech, yeah. Which actually is funny. Virginia Tech, a team of so much promise going into the season, the big, huge Week 1 matchup against Boise State, which of course they lost, and then went on kind of a slide to begin the season.
Lose to James Madison. Yeah. Would you ever thought at that point, Vatech loses to James Madison and Boise State 0-2 at the beginning of the year, and then would make it to a BCS?
Never in a million years after what I saw against the Boise State team, which actually it wasn't a bad game.
No, that was actually pretty good.
It wasn't a bad game, but the following week,
James Madison.
What happened? I mean, that was like Michigan versus Appalachian State. You know, it was one of those things where you just scratch your head and go, what the hell happened here?
So Stanford, Vatech, I think Stanford's going to roll. Stanford's just good. If not for Oregon in that the Pac-10, Stanford, I think, would have had a good chance in national championship game.
This is a very solid team. This is Andrew Luck's team.
Yes.
And he's going to be a very high draft pick in next year's NFL draft because a lot of these bottom feeders in the NFL need a quarterback. So Andrew Luck's probably going to be at least a top 7 pick in the draft next season or coming up in April. I like this Stanford team a lot. I'm not crazy about Virginia Tech, even though they did pick it up and hey, they made it to a BCS. You got to give them credit. They're an ACC team though, and they're certainly not an SEC caliber talent. So
what in any team that loses to James Madison, I know they rattled off 10 wins after that, but come on.
But who did they have to beat other than Georgia Tech and North Carolina? Miami?
Miami was ranked at the time. They beat Florida State, who was ranked at the time. Central Michigan.
All right.
They beat a couple bowl teams. I know East Carolina's in a bowl this year. Boston College is. A lot of other teams are bowl teams, but yeah, I think Stanford's just overall the better team.
Yeah, they've got Luck at quarterback, I mentioned, and then they're a top 20 rushing team in the nation as well. So I think Stanford controls the time of possession, controls the clock, keeps Virginia Tech's offense off the field, and I think probably wins this game by a couple of touchdowns.
All right,
call it 31-17.
31-17. That's what you're going with.
Yeah,
I'll go 70-7. No, I don't know.
It's impressive.
I don't do points very well.
I just pick a number off the top of my head, and it works sometimes, and it makes me look kind of stupid other times, but that's okay. That's what I get paid for.